call the meeting to order. This is the Enterprise Committee meeting. I'm Tim Steele, and everybody, I'd like to have everybody introduce themselves and go around the table.
Big training somebody.
Amy Domboski.
Ron Elliott, Stone Hill.
Todd Coles, Port Engineer.
Steve Rebuffo, Port Director.
George Michaelis, Municipal Manager.
Jim Trent, ML&P.
Bart Molden, IEC.
Sharon Walsh, Deputy Port Director.
Brett Jokola, Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility.
Robert Owens with the Municipal Law Department.
Cheryl Beckham, Port of Anchorage Finance Director. Lindsay Wood, Port of Anchorage.
Eugene Ori, MLMP.
Mark Johnston, ML&P.
Rick Miller, MLP.
John O'Day, private citizen.
Thank you. I guess, George, you want to start it off?
Sure.
And we'll go from there?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Steele. So, as just for everybody's edification, Chairman Steele is now the Enterprise Chair, and in a discussion with the Chair to make sure that the committee is kept up to speed on all of the different enterprise activities as well as the utilities. The request is that in addition to the monthly updates on the port construction as well as the municipal line power construction projects, that we have one of the utilities or enterprise activities at each one of those monthly sessions, bring everyone up to speed as to what's going on within that particular utility or enterprise. It was scheduled for Solid Waste Services to be the first one in the hopper after the two updates on the construction. However, yesterday, Paul Alcantara was sent home and has to stay home on bed rest. He has severe bronchitis, like real bad. And so with the chair's concurrence, instead of having solid waste this month, we'll have them next month, but we will have AWW present today in their stead. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to the port to go ahead and give you an update on where we are right now on the construction project.
Thank you, Steve. I presume this.
I can walk through. Basically, we'll walk through the project update that we hopefully was distributed in advance, but if not, you have a copy of. First thing to review are just the activities that have been underway over this last period. We did complete the concept design study that you'll remember we briefed out in November. So we finally have a project concept selected for the program, and now can begin working the implementation of those elements. Those documents, the concept design study document and the associated ground motion study are available on our website in their entirety. Other activities this period have included continuing work on the test pile work plan, which we still anticipate this time executing later this year. We are drafting the permit applications and procurement packages for that work. We haven't approved any task orders for CH2M Hill since the last update, but we are working a number of task orders currently. They're in process, and I've listed those. These are organized to execute on the major elements of the program. The first one being the marine terminal work. That's the container terminals, Terminal 1 and 2, and the petroleum terminals, POL1 and POL2. Again, our anticipated delivery approach is design, bid, build. So the first step is to hire the design team or teams, and CH2M Hill is being tasked with putting the necessary documents and information together to get that underway. So that's the basis of what we anticipate from Task Order 5. Task Order 6 is programming activities to better define the requirements for the landside building work that's part of the critical path of the marine terminal construction. So that's the topic of Task Order 6. Task Order 7 now will focus on the north extension stabilization work as an element of the program, and moving toward procurement of a delivery team, designer of record, builder, CMGC. That's yet to be specifically determined, but that's part of this task order. Task order 8 then is further landside site investigation that's required to provide information to future designers, builders for the landside work. So those are the task orders under development right now, and we expect those to be executed before our next update. Miscellaneous work that's also been accomplished. The URS did complete the site-specific seismic hazard analysis that was incorporated into the ground motion study that CH performed for us. That work's complete. Scope changes. We have had scope changes on CH2M Hill's task orders, task order 3 and 4. For task order 3, we, at the recommendation of the GAC, which we've talked about, that seismic study was expedited as part of our concept design study. So CH2M Hill was added scope to help us manage the URS work and further that work with the ground motion study. URS was looking at deep ground motion. CH brought it up to ground surface. Task order 4, we had structured this task order as a multi-step task order. Once we had met with the regulatory agencies, primarily Corps of Engineers and National Marine Fisheries Service, we had a better perspective of what the path forward for the test pile program was going to be in terms of permitting. So having that nailed down, we were able to scope specifically with CH and HDR as the lead on the environmental support, those activities that we anticipate with the Corps and National Marine Fisheries Service acting as non-federal designee to basically cut through the red tape to get the project permitted, test pile project permitted. So we've provided some detail on the various federal requirements that are associated with that, the Endangered Species Act, Essential Fish Habitat, National Historic Preservation Act, and other processes that are required. So that's been fully executed with HDR and CH to execute. And then we have minor activities associated with the MOA flood hazard permit, but that is part of the scope. We've attached CH2M Hill's schedule to the package. We are on schedule, and you'll see a detailed breakdown of the activities and milestones associated with the task orders underway 3 and 4. We've also included a budget update to show changes in the authorized amount and expenditures over this last period. As far as the change order values associated with the scope changes on task order 3, we increased that task order amount by $42,475. There was no change in the performance period, so the total value of task order 3, which is now complete, is $675,690. Not all of that was, I don't think all of that was lump sum, so I think we do anticipate ending below budget on that task order. Task order 4, the increase for permitting activities amounted to $940,240. This does extend the period of performance through September, when we anticipate having the permits secured. The total value of task order 4 is now just over $1 million. That's all the information I have at this point, if you have any questions.
Mr. Baskey.
So, considering, what was our legislative ask? 355. So, worst case scenario, legislature gives us nothing. Well, what does that mean for this project this year?
So let me answer that, because we've looked at it. So we have got approximately 130 million on hand. And so we have got a game plan how we can go ahead and use that 130 million, until such time as, we get the funding to continue on with the project. But I think we probably ought to kind of step back a little bit and take a look at just all of our recollections. Thank you, recollections of all the different projects that the city has had. The most effective ones, the most efficient ones have been when you had the funding up front. It's when you start piecemealing and you don't know how much funding you're going to get that you have to continually change the scope of what you're going to do. And that just adds to the problem of delay, and which adds to the problem of increased cost, and plus the cost of money keeps going up because of inflation. So I think our strategy needs to be the whole ask, this is what we want. This is really what we need. If they say we can't give it to you all at one time, and I'm not recommending from their operating budget, I'm recommending that they do a statewide bond because that's cheaper in the long run for everybody. You can, you're paying it off over time. It may not be cheaper because of interest rates, but with their AAA rating and everything else, it certainly would be a better way to go instead of putting the harm on the operating budget. But if that's not the case, then we have tactically and strategically broken it down as to timeframes that we have to have X in order to keep going, to make this thing work. So that is what our emphasis has to be. I think as a collective body and everybody else, that's the point we have to make. However, on the side, what we are looking at, and we've got a meeting that's being set up to discuss the possibility of a P3. And as you know, with the private public partnerships, there's different ways that they can go. There's minimal involvement to maximum involvement. And so what we would do is explore the different possibilities to see what would be of the greatest benefit to Anchorage. But that would have to be the absolute fallback position, because no matter what kind of a P3 that you set up, remember your partner wants to make a profit. And so in the long run, the cheaper way of doing this is through the bonding, statewide bond. But anyway, that is our backup. So does that answer your question?
Would you explain to me what P3 is?
So it's where, I'll throw up a hypothetical. So Anchorage, Alaska has a project.
Yeah.
Our project is the port. So we would partner with a private entity. I don't care who it is. It could be, I don't want to name anybody specific because there are a lot of entities out there that would love to be a partner with this. But so contractor X or entity X says, hey, we'll partner with you, and there's all kinds of variations. One of the variations could be that they could say, hey, we'll go ahead and we'll help you fund this project. But what we want as a result of helping you fund this project, we want X dollars in return over X period of time. That's a method. Another method is, you know what, we'll come in there and we'll do this construction for you. We're going to charge you this for it. We're going to do it, and we're going to be your partner, and over time you're going to pay us back either in revenues, promised revenues, or a portion of those promised revenues, or whatever it is for a designated period of time. That's a possibility. Another one is that you actually, and remember there's about 6 different variations. So I'm going to give you maybe one of the most extreme. Most extreme is entity comes in, says we're going to partner with you, and this is what we're offering. We're going to take over the entire operations of the port. We're going to take over all the construction of the port, and we're going to take all the revenues of the port. And oh, by the way, depending on what those revenues are, we may ask you to also supplement with X. So that's the most extreme, but there's all kinds of variations in between. But it is a mechanism. It is being used throughout the country on different types of projects and different types of operations. So that's what we're looking at. We're having a meeting with ADA to look into and to explore the possibility, because we could partner with ADA, and then ADA could further partner with other entities. But there's all kinds of combinations and ways of looking at this. It's not the preferred way, but it is a way of getting the project done. Does that answer your question, sir?
Mr. Train?
George, who are we
Yeah.
working with down the state legislature on that even revenue bond? Governor's office or the Senate?
So I think the strategy right now is that we're going to be working with the governor's office. There's going to be a meeting set up with the governor. I think they're going next week. There's going to be a meeting with the chairs of the finance, the House and the Senate. And there's also going to be meetings and briefings to the Transportation Committee of the legislature, both houses. And there's one other entity that they're going to be briefing and concentrating on there, plus our own caucus.
Would you give me an outline on where you're going? Because I would see the governor.
In fact,
On the level.
Shalon is putting that together right now, so I'll get you a copy of it.
Yeah, I think it would be nice if the state would authorize bonding for the whole thing, and we sell them as we need them, kind of thing. But I'm hoping that they will be able to step up, and I know this year's a tough year. Any other questions from the committee? Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And I guess MLP's up next, huh?
Well, Mr. Chair, MLP is here with the key folks that are involved in the project, and they'll give you a very brief overview of where we're at, the same format that we've used in the past. James?
Morning, Assembly members. It's been about 2 months since we reported last to the Oversight Committee. We are roughly 1 year past notice to proceed out there on site. And if you drive past the construction site, there's quite a lot of progress. Since November, Quanta has gotten all the building steel up for the main power plant building, which implies and means that all the foundation work is complete within the power plant structure. Quanta subs, PGI and Roger Hickel has the building siding mostly complete. Some key paneling has been left off for access and installation of equipment, including the steam turbine, the last major piece of equipment. That will be arriving in March. Roofing as decking is complete, and the roofing subcontractor is currently installing the parapet roof. It's 5 separate building roofs, or 5 different levels. They have one of those complete. They're working on the second right now. We're quite lucky that we've had the winter we've had. The original schedule was to have Quanta shut down for the winter, but they've plowed right through it, and we've been very lucky. And if they get the rest of the roof done, they really decouple weather from continued construction. The major pieces of steel that you might have seen, we had upwards of 5 cranes on site in November and December, were to build the building as well as the major boilers and the associated exhaust stacks. Those are complete and up. That was done successfully, and quite a lot of moving equipment on a 3.5 acre site, so I'm pleased to see that. You might recognize the cooling tower is complete. That's the large structure up close to the Glen Highway. And men and women are working internally to put the various equipment inside the building now on smaller housekeeping pads, and that will continue out throughout the winter. So in summary, there's a lot going on. There's about 150 construction workers on site, and they're doing a great job, and they're staying on schedule. And I guess that's what I have to say most about that, is that the project is on schedule. It's and the contractors work endeavoring to complete the project ahead of schedule. How much ahead of schedule is in flux, but we have every faith and biometrics that they are on schedule. That schedule completion, if you might remember, is June 12th, 2016, is when we're supposed to make sellable power. So that's the scope there. Another side note, the rest of the internal parts, I mean, it was pretty amazing how quick the building went up, but for the most part, it's a shell, and there's a lot of equipment, pumps, fans, heat exchangers, and stuff that are yet to be installed. And in the next 60 to 90 days, a lot of equipment will be coming across the port, and within 90 days, 95% of the equipment will be on site, and it will major equipment, and then it gets placed, and stuff, and pipes and electric and everything gets wired up to it. So there's a lot of equipment being delivered daily, and that will continue through March. Okay, Bart, would you like to speak to the finance side?
Sure. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Assembly members.
Just going to walk you through where we left off a couple months ago. Item number 4 is the outstanding scope changes. As you may recall, we issued change order number 5, which was to look at the design concepts for bringing the dispatch function and the administrative build out to support that. Within change order number 5, we have received that preliminary reporting, and the phase 3 of that is now to actually perform the actual build out of the dispatch area and the additional administrative offices. Currently, the preliminary release we had on that was right at 1.4 million. We have had Stantec and Quanta, which is, Stantec is the Quanta's engineer of record for the entire project. They've been here all of this week, and it looks like we're going to be working that change order down under $1 million for all of the facility and the HVA, the electrical, fire suppression systems, the other things that had to be upgraded as a part of that dispatch function. So that will be forthcoming, but we're hoping that we're going to be south of $1 million, and that's very good. The next item is the sewer extension and plant 2 metering. That was, we are having to run our sewer extension a little further than we had originally expected, and AWU has requested that we meter both the old plant and the new plant, and so we have to do some additional build out there, and so that is being looked at currently, and it may go up a little bit. We've also found that we need to provide a short access road for AWU to be able to get to the actual metering devices that we're going to be installing. So there's a short section of road that we have to build off of Bald Eagle Drive. So we're probably looking somewhere between 50 and 100,000 for that particular component. We currently had that slated at 50, but it may go up a little bit. And then the last item that's still hanging out there is the external pre-screening on the intake filters. This is primarily due to the intake air on the combustion turbines. During the spring and summer, we get a lot of cotton, and this actually will elongate the life of our filter system by being able to filter out that cotton that gets in the air, and they can clean the external screens and not have to replace the actual filtering of the CTG.
It actually acts as a pre-filter.
Yeah, it's a pre-screen. Okay, so those are the items that are currently outstanding. Change orders issued to date. We have change orders 1 through 5. We've summarized those on the bottom of the page. Change order 1 was administrative. Change order 2 is a reimbursable work authorization. We have a separate contract with GE to actually furnish and install the GE turbines and generators. However, when that work comes to the actual site, Quanta is in charge of actually placing that equipment and doing all the fit up. But there is work that gets crossed up between GE and Quanta. So any work that is on GE's side of the ledger, but they don't have construction forces here, they actually ask Quanta to do that work. So we pay Quanta, and then we get a reimbursement from GE under their contract. So it's a net zero at the end of the day, but we do have to post it against the Quanta contract as an actual change, because we are paying that money to Quanta. Change order 3 was the initial rough-in work that we did in the basement area. That was due to plumbing and activities associated with the dispatch area. Change order 4 was an option that we had under the original award with Quanta, which was to extend the warranty from 1 year to 2 years, and we did exercise that option. And then change order 5 was the phase 2 work for the dispatch area, which was the preliminary conceptual design work. And then we also did a 12/4/7 conduit upgrade and a loop to make more reliable service for Instar and AWU across the street. And then we upgraded from aluminum to copper on some distribution cables. So, no questions there. I will go forward with the budget, give you a summary of where we're at on that.
Any questions on that other part of it, on this first part of it? Or you want to wait until then?
Okay, we are now on the budget summary.
Okay.
There's been quite a bit of activity since you've probably seen this last time. We've also reformatted this a little bit. Hopefully this will, we've had some suggestions from both the administration and I believe one of the assembly members asked for a little different change on this. So going under the committed column, these are the major contracts that are currently in place and working at the Plant 2A project. The Quanta Power, that $200,676,000, that includes all 5 change orders to date. The original award was $199,835. The GE contract, IEC is the owner's engineer. That's on ML&P side of the fence. Our builder's risk, AFUDC, A&G, and other expenses. So those currently total up to $304 million. Actual incurred are invoices and payments that have actually been made to date. The Quanta Power is through November. We are just now processing the December bill, so that is not included in this number here. GE, IEC, and the rest of them are current to date. AFUDC and A&G is through November only. We have not posted the December activities yet. So our current expenditures to date is $150 million, and you see the unspent balance on the right-hand side. We broke out separately for you now the contingency and change order authority, which was originally approved by the Assembly, $9.9 million. We've executed just over $500,000 for a balance of $9.350. So dropping down to the change order summary, this changes a little bit. We've actually listed this out so you'd have an idea of what caused the change orders and how they're being calculated. Administrative change order number 1 was no cost. 2, 3, and 5 were owner initiated. That's the 551. And then change order 4, which was the 1-year warranty extension, does not calculate against our contingency because we actually asked for that as part of the contract award originally to the Assembly. But all of those numbers are included in the Quanta contract. So project funding, we currently have $306 million sitting in our project budget. We have fiscal year 15 appropriations of just under $8 million, and the total project budget is $314 million, and we are online and doing very well. We don't see any reason to be coming back to you on this number at this time.
I'm knocking on wood.
Okay. Any questions on this piece of it?
Questions?
I just have a comment. You know, apples and oranges, port and ML&P, I get that. But I'm hopeful that a project of this magnitude can really finish on budget and ahead of schedule. So thus far, I am impressed. So I just appreciate the detailed part. And Eugene, very well done.
We're working hard to keep it that way.
Very well done.
Mr. Dabrowski's praise to you guys, but thank you, whoever made the weather god happy. No snow's been great. How are we heating the inside of this building now that some of the sides are up? What are you using to heat the thing so it's workable inside?
They have indirect fire diesel heating, large spaces. They actually have miniature gas turbines that are using the exhaust heat to heat the buildings. So there's a high-pitched whir around the site. So contractor is spending money to keep it heated, but they are making it on the tail end by getting the project done ahead of time. So they are keeping the site heated.
Thank you, sir.
10 inches of snow is not going to cause any problem.
Yeah, it's what's expected, isn't it? Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
The extension of the road and the metering of the sewage, is that just to know what's there, or is it
I'm sorry.
AWW is going to want you to meter the outfalls. And the question is, is that just to get a handle on what the volume is, or is it probably also for what it's going to cost you?
Yes to both. When Plant 2 was built in the late 70s, it was not metered, and AWW wants to get a handle on how much sewer effluent we give them, and there is limits to the current infrastructure, so they want to meter it and ensure that we're under that, so that makes sense. The good news is that this new style power plant uses roughly 40% of the water that the old Plant 2 will use, so our number will actually go down. But we always envisioned metering the effluent from Plant 2A, but this addition is they'd like us to meter Plant 2, which should be almost nothing because it will be idled for the most part.
I too am happy that everybody's, that you guys have had a great construction season, and that you appear to be ahead of schedule and ahead of budget to a certain extent, although we haven't had some add-ons, but seems to be going good. Knock on for Mike. Good job.
Thanks.
Anything else?
So just to move you a little further ahead, the next chart you see is the Quanta 30-month proposed payment. This is their 30-month schedule. This is through June. And this is the red lines are the actual dollars that are posted. That brings us up to November. And this is just the Quanta contract. We are expecting, as a result of the meetings here this week, that the January through May activity is going to inflect, and we should be ramping up beyond these expected numbers here, because this is the 30-month schedule. They're trying to target a 24 to 26-month completion schedule, so that means that the activity is going to move closer now. So we're expecting some pretty significant changes here in this first 6 months on this schedule at any rate.
Could be great to get inside.
Yeah. And then the next chart is just, this is the project, all cost in. This is the $150 million to date through November. And then December and January, these are costs that flow forward because it's a cumulative total. And obviously December and January's payments for Quanta are not in these last 2 months. That's why you see them as gray. So far we're still trending a little bit below what they were projecting overall, all in, but we would expect this to start picking up a little bit more.
Okay, finally, item 8, issues. We don't see any issues at this time. And the only other comment I'd like to make is the project, what keeps me up at night is accidents. And I'm very pleased that Quanta has brought a strong safety culture to the site. They are approaching 200,000 work hours without OSHA recordable incident. And everyone's very pleased about that. There's some unique techniques that they're using to promote that, and including having the craft labor choose charities of their choice to give a certain check to every time a certain milestone is met. So that's really been kind of a carrot and stick approach, and the craft is really engaged, because that's what it takes is people to be engaged to be safe. And just as a side note, the Alaska labor statistics show on average about 20,000 work hours between recordable incidents. So Quanta has something good going on, and we'd like to keep it going that way.
One observation I had based upon what you were talking about earlier is that the cooling towers are a little bit closer to the highway on Plant 2A.
Sure.
But I suspect the wind is typically away from the highway, but is there any chance of any problem with that once you go online?
That's a good question. You'll also might notice that it's a very large cooling tower, and it's not just because it's closer to the highway versus the older cooling tower with the existing plant. That's because it's a specially designed cooling tower that is will wring the water out of the warm air and minimize the cloud formation, so that on those cold inversion layer days that we minimize cloud production like you see currently out there when it's cold. So we did take a look at that, and we also modeled, before we got started with the project, we did a model to under worst inversion and ice fogging conditions that we wouldn't lay that down and make a hazard. So we did look at that.
All good news. So we're waiting for the power. Of course, the power's going to be cheaper from this plant.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you.
Anything else, Jerry?
So we'll hear from AWWU. While Barbara is here, though, chair training, two things that I'd like to ask you about and see if you would concur. Number one is that because of the questions that were asked by a couple of the assembly members regarding the legal contract for our litigation effort on behalf of the port, we're going to request that you have an executive session Tuesday night, okay, so we can go ahead and answer all the questions and do what we have to do. And then also, chair training and Barbara, there is an item that has come up that is very, very important to the municipality of Anchorage and to the state of Alaska. And the mayor has asked me to request that you add a 30-minute work session tomorrow so that I can brief you on that and so that we can make sure that we know how we're going to approach this particular situation, and I'll just leave it at that.
Do you have a title for this?
I'm sorry?
Do you have a title for what you got?
The title would be Military Force Reduction.
What are work session looking at?
We're starting pretty early in the morning. I think we've got a committee meeting, and then we've got another committee meeting in the afternoon.
I think you end at 2:30. You end at 2:30, don't you, tomorrow?
We do end at 2:30, but that's after the, at one of the ad hoc committee meetings. So,
We need to program this in
Okay.
first, so maybe we have to start earlier in the day.
okay.
Whatever this is.
Or maybe shorten one of the other sessions or something. We'll figure it out.
We would request the whole body be there if that's possible.
So we'll figure that out, and I'll send a confirmation to everyone.
So do we have any more information on downsizing?
I will lay it all out for everyone tomorrow. I think I know pretty much where we're at today. So.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, BWW. So for the committee members, one of the things that Mr. Steele had asked is that when we do these periodic updates for the utilities and the enterprise activities, that we focus on several areas to keep you up to speed as to what's going on. One of them certainly is the finance/budget aspect of their operations. The second is their overall total operations, and within that would be construction efforts, new service levels, those type of things. The third component would be any initiatives that the utility enterprise activity has instituted that would basically be in reference to cost efficiencies, enhancements, or operational enhancements. And then the last would be if there's any issues that of relevance that needs to be brought to your attention. So that's pretty much the format, although the major topic items that these particular briefings will have each month. Okay.
I appreciate AWWU stepping up on short notice to fill the gap here. We originally had the solid waste services programmed in, and we really appreciate you being able to.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a PowerPoint, and although I think I'm going to hit on all the topics that George mentioned, it's probably not quite in that format because of the time constraints of putting this together. I think what you'll see is a lot of material that's recycled from briefing that we gave to the Regulatory Commission back in November. But I hope it's informative and useful for the committee. So we're just about there.
I did want to say for the record before we get started on this, Bill Starr did call in and he is excused. He's out of town flight.
Here we go. Which one? This one here. This one? Yep. Mr. Chair, I could go on for a while with the amount of material that's here. You want to give me a kind of sense of how long you want me to talk?
Well, we've got 45 minutes. You don't have to be compelled to take that period of time, but...
I'd say 30 so we can have 15 for questions, because
Okay.
I know I have some.
A lot of questions.
You haven't even seen anything, you already got questions?
She's already got her list.
He can't say his name in 30 minutes.
Well, thanks for having us down today. We've been looking forward to talking to the Assembly Enterprise Committee for some time. What I want to do today is kind of give you a general overview of the utilities, practices and issues, and I guess one way to start is that people think that we exist to line the pockets of politicians and to be an economic engine for the community and to at the very least provide water and wastewater services. But really our job is protecting public health and environment. That's what we do, and that's what we focus on and develop all of our practices and all of our businesses associated with those two jobs. There's 3 pillars of the business that support that, and I've been telling my staff that if we're not working with physical infrastructure or financial resources or human resources that deal with support of the commitment to safeguarding public health and environment, then it's probably not a job that the utility is doing or should be doing. Woven into that is communication with our customers, communication among our staff within the utility, and communication with our colleagues in the community and in the business community. So first up is a little talk about permit compliance. That's kind of a measure of our commitment to the environment. And as it happens, our operations are winning national awards in that regard. You may have seen, or you will see in the Assembly meeting next week, the PBR report for the fourth quarter of 2014. And by all measures, we are doing very well with respect to permit compliance. For the fourth quarter, we have 100% compliance with the Safe Drinking Water Act, for Clean Water Act compliance at Asplund and Eagle River, and for the Clean Air Act compliance. We had one little blip at Girdwood that will keep us from 100% across the board, but we are in the running for national awards again in 2014 for this level of permit compliance at our water and wastewater facilities. And that's largely due to the fact that our operators are really dedicated. They are fully behind the commitment and act as professionals. Even though they're union employees, they are professionals that work toward that end. This slide is a little dated. We actually did get, I guess I said that. We did get reauthorization of the Eagle River permit in 2014. That plant processes about 1.2 million gallons a day. Girdwood plant processes about half of that, about 600,000 gallons a day. And the Aspen plant is our biggest plant, and the one where we have the largest contingent liability. Right now that permit authorization for discharge from that plant is under review by EPA. as it has been since 2005 when we applied for reauthorization of the permit. So they must be taking their time and considering it very carefully. I'm sure that's what it is. But I said it's our biggest contingent liability. If we had to change our operations and upgrade the plant to a higher degree of treatment, that's about a $700 million bill. So if we were forced to do that, I'm not sure that we would see the benefits to the community that projects of that order are providing for ML&P and for the port. But that would be a project that will be worthy of attention should it ever have to come to pass. We're hoping that that's not the case, and we're fiercely defending our record to demonstrate that it's not necessary to do so. We're talking about 28 million gallons a day of discharge to Cook Inlet at Point Waranza from the Asplin, John M. Asplin wastewater treatment facility. You may recall that John M. Asplin was the mayor in the city days, and he was the champion of providing wastewater treatment in the early 1970s. Actually, he began work on the plant prior to the Clean Water Act amendments of 1972, which provided federal funding for construction for many treatment plants across the country and raised the ante on clean water for the country at that time. Unfortunately, those grants are long gone. Construction grants are ancient history for water and wastewater, and improvements that have to be made now are done almost entirely on the backs of the ratepayers. Our authority for discharge under the permit that we have is provided in Section 301H of the Clean Water Act, which says that if you have the right kind of environment, that is where Cook Inlet is the perfect example of high tidal velocities that lead to rapid assimilation of the wastewater, and you have limited and controlled discharge into the wastewater facility, which we do here. We don't have a lot of manufacturing. We're not Cincinnati or Huntsville, Alabama. Then if you meet 9 criteria of that sort, the Clean Water Act allows us to provide a primary level of treatment, which means screening and solid separation by gravity. Secondary treatment processes typically involve a biological process where the organics in the wastewater are consumed by bugs in vessels that are set up to provide for that consumption and production of the organic waste. As a result, we still get 75% removal of solids at our plant. The secondary quality requirement is for 85% removal. So we have not very far to go, but I'm thinking that a $700 million investment for an extra 10% of solids removal from an environment that does not seem to be suffering may not be the best community investment.
One quick break.
Is this Hawaii, Honolulu recently had to change their tertiary cleaning?
They did.
And the estimate was $4 billion to put their plant in.
I didn't hear the price tag, but the one saving grace there, the one good piece of news, well, it's not really good news because the city of Honolulu had a number of different environmental objectives that they were trying to meet. And through negotiation with I think it's Region 9 of EPA, they came to the conclusion that timing is everything, and that the commitment to go to secondary and tertiary treatment was there, but because of all the different environmental objectives that they wanted to achieve, they had a 28 to 33 year compliance schedule to make that happen. So with that experience, we don't have that same kind of level of environmental needs around the community, because I'd like to think that the community at large is a little bit better prepared to take on environmental issues, and has done a good job of taking on environmental issues. But that said, I think that a compliance schedule would put secondary expansion off into the future some way. Still, $700 million. $700 million.
I have one question, and this is maybe silly, but I'm reading your title. What is your expectation? Are you expecting the EPA is going to actually change our
No, I'm
Word
expecting.
looming to me seems negative in context.
Well, it's a bit of a cloud, but I'm thinking that the cloud will.
That we'll be able to hold.
Will go off with the winds because we do have a significant amount of information that demonstrates that we meet the 9 criteria that are appropriate. I can't control political winds, and I try to get every piece of information that I can when I talk to EPA. And I'll tell you what, they are really good at holding their cards close to the chest.
You
We
know,
do,
what,
however, have a good flushing action of the, because of the tidal erosion.
We are the poster child for why the 301H modification should apply.
one of the things that Brett had indicated was that worst case scenario, if we had to go to a tertiary treatment, right now our estimate is around 700 million. It could be more than that, but there's also a stage in between that they could decide upon, right? It could go secondary.
Well, the secondary would be about 700 million.
Okay, so the worst would be $1 billion
Yeah,
something.
it would be up there. We haven't priced out what the full tertiary requirement would entail, but $1.5 billion to or more is not inconceivable.
Well, we've had these discussions, you and I have had these discussions before, so, you know, I concur with your analysis that we are the poster child of why this exists. I just didn't know if you knew something that I didn't know, as far as maybe they were gonna pull it back.
Well, I guess I'll address that a little bit more with a couple more comments on the slide, but something that was really telling to me was when we went through and realized that beluga whales were an endangered species, we wanted to ensure that we had that evaluation checked. And frankly, if there was something that this plant was doing or that this community was doing that was impeding the recovery of beluga whales, we wanted to be the first to know about it.
Right.
So we invested pretty heavily in an evaluation of the biology of belugas and the distribution of belugas and modeling of Cook Inlet. And we published in 2011 for EPA, on EPA's behalf, a biological evaluation of the effect of permanent reauthorization on endangered species. And the intent here is when EPA completes its work and publishes a draft permit, they have a responsibility under the Endangered Species Act to undertake that biological evaluation. And they ceded to us the authority as a non-federal representative to develop that information. They have yet to accept it and acknowledge it. That's why it's still in final draft form. But it's now 3 years old, and we have decided that information is too valuable to be left in some drawer at EPA. So we published it on our website, and we've made it known to marine mammal listservers and scientists around the world that the information's out there. But we also have an extensive monitoring program, and there's a biological conclusion comment. Our monitoring over 25 plus years has shown that the plant meets all permanent conditions. That's kind of the first rule of thumb. There's no measurable water quality effects. This is our summertime excursion into Cook Inlet, actually looking for those effects in the water column. We do bioassays. There's no toxicity in the bioassays. There's no accumulation of toxic materials, either in the sediments or in algae that grows along the tidal flatlands. There's no sediment effects at the outfall. It's cobbly down there. If as opposed to other environments, some fjords, for example, in the Aleutians, are impacted by deposition of waste from fish processing plants. There's no deposition that's taking place here at all. We look at trace metals, and we've identified that there's probably more, well, no, in fact, there are more trace metals that are associated with the particulates in glacial till, glacial runoff, glacial flour, than that comes out of the plant. And through our analysis, even the emerging contaminants of personal care products and pharmaceuticals do not have an effect, or do not, we've judged them not to have an effect on either beluga whales or their prey. So we think we're in pretty good stead there. Another topic is infrastructure, and that's really the driver for much of our utility expenses and utility operations. A picture of our facilities around the community, from our water plant at Asplund our water plant is included in the center frame to work around the city, including our wastewater plant on the left side of the frame. Our buried treasure includes 1,600 miles of underground pipeline, 3 wastewater facilities, 2 surface water plants. The list goes on and on. Our book value for those facilities, as depreciated, is still over $800 million. If we were to replace that today, that'd be about an $8 billion bill. So if you look at what you spend on maintenance on your car, for example, you have a $20,000 car, you might spend 5%, $400 a year keeping your car up. Well, we have $8 billion of investment here, and we spend about $60 to $80 million a year in capital improvements. A good part of that is rehab and replacement of those pieces of parts. That has to do with water main breaks. This is a map of water main breaks that took place through the course of 2014. They're not limited to certain areas. They take place all over the community. A lot of that has to do with corrosion of pipe. A lot of that has to do with ground movement, where a pipe can shear and break in part. An emergency response for this kind of thing is expensive and involved. A little tiny hole, the hole on the left side of the screen in the bottom of that corroded pipe, is about the size of a 50-cent piece. That's a 30-inch water main, and that is the water main that is being dug up in the picture on the right. It's just at the intersection of Elmore and Tudor. And our crews were able to, on 2 successive weekends, one, determine the nature of the leak, and the second weekend we went out coordinating with DOT and implemented a fix. However, we'll be back. The corrosion, as you can see, the uneven surface of the corroded pipe on the left did not allow us to use our standard approach of putting a sleeve over that. We could not get a good seal. So we have a project in place that we'll implement after the Iditarod runs across the bridge, presuming that we have snow enough to do that. We'll run a fix which involves inserting a pipe in the corroded pipe that will have the same capacity because of smoother walls, and we'll take care of that pipe by trenchless technology for the most part. We'll still have to open up the streets on both ends, but it's a project that will be a major project for us coming into the springtime. Asset management, though, has allowed us to get ahead of the pipes, and since 1987, the number of breaks that we have has fallen. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means there's a number of steps involved. We assess the condition of the pipe that we have. We analyze the risk of failure and the consequences of failure. Well, the risk in terms of probability of failure and consequences of failure. And then try and identify the right service level. Is in this neighborhood, is a break tolerable? Can we dig it up once every 5 years? Or, as is the case for Tudor, do you want to fix it and have it there for 30 to 60 to 100 years? In the case of our most critical assets, we want to shoot for the latter. On the sewer side, condition assessment is equally important. Here's a picture of a robotic camera that goes down and basically does a colonoscopy of our sewers. And you can see in the lower right side, crossing underneath the railroad near the Fish Creek trunk in Spinard area, you can see a big rock or something is finding its way down into the pipe. Well, that needs a fix, and we're working with the railroad to make sure that we can get access to that and repair that as soon as we can. Mr. Steele.
I hate to interrupt, but are we, because we have the new technology, because we are being efficient with the cameras in terms of identifying what really needs to be replaced rather than just the time and soil type or whatever we used before, but are we pushing the limits of the pipe to the extent that we can anticipate more failures with that method?
I think it's going to take some time to settle in on what that sweet spot is. We have a lot fewer breaks than communities do in the south as a rule. And I think that's in part due to the fact that we do construct so deeply. So we're not as endangered by loads of trucks on the streets and that kind of thing. But on the other hand, the cost of getting those breaks is significantly aggravated by the depth. The center top frame, I guess that's a manhole. But what we've done to help minimize the cost, I think it's shown in this picture.
Well, if I'm getting ahead of you, just.
We're going back. This is a.
Okay.
You can see the box in amongst the center of all of our vested interests. Little joke there, vested interests. By using caissons like that, and using the Vector means of excavation, using a big vacuum hose that's reaching down in there, we can minimize our footprint of our breaks. We fixed a break last week on Northern Lights with a hole that was about 10 feet square. We were able to get the caisson down in there and use the repair clamp effectively to fix a shear break in Northern Lights Boulevard. I bet not many of you even noticed that happened because it took place with the closure on Friday night, and we were out of there by about 3 in the afternoon on Saturday. So we rank everything. High consequences and high likelihood of failure puts us in the red zone, high risk. Not very much is involved there, very, very small component of our overall system. We map those areas. Again, here's a map of Fish Creek. That area that I showed with the pipe with the big rock coming in off the top is in the red zone, kind of in the middle where the railroad crossing is. So we take the high-risk areas and work on those areas first. This is what a crappy piece of water pipe looks like. And our tools there are even more sophisticated than on the wastewater side. The thing on the left is a smart ball, which provides an acoustic signal and records that inside the ball, and we can gauge the condition of a reach of pipe based on the findings of the acoustic signal and the capture in that ball. The trick is getting the ball back, because we're at the whims of the flow of water as to where the ball goes. So at one point, it's a good thing we're Alaskans, because one of our operators actually fished that ball out of a reservoir with a pixie. On the right-hand side is a snake that's even more sophisticated. It provides an electromagnetic signal that can actually pinpoint not only the location along the pipe, but where it is on the clock face. If you're looking down through the pipe, if it's at 12 o'clock or 3 o'clock or 6 o'clock, it can tell where that deficiency is and mark that. So we had about a $20 million requirement to replace all the piping in Bayshore. And as a result of this kind of analysis, we reduced the needs for replacement and the needs for rehab of that pipe to areas that were most affected. And that saves, I think our contract amendment is coming up. I think we're going to be up to $8 million on the contract. So we saved over 60% of the initially projected cost by using this technology. Our capital program looks at asset management plans, kind of the asset management approach we've been talking about. We also do water and wastewater master plans for the community and the pipe system at large, facility plans for individual treatment plants and facilities. We generate projects based on our own interpretation of efficiencies, and we coordinate with other agencies. Last year, we worked with DOT to make sure that I guess it was Public Works on 40th Avenue. We did a fix there, and we're typically doing those kinds of things. In fact, probably our most significant partnership right now is, as Mr. Malden spoke of, our partnership with ML&P, so that we can have an exchange of water and energy to provide the heat dissipation capacity that ML&P needs, while at the same time benefiting our ratepayers with water that's just a few degrees warmer. We do a thorough vetting of capital projects. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That kind of, I can go into details on that if you like, but I think I know you two have heard this story before.
I've heard it multiple times.
Our capital program is long in the tooth. That is to say, we're going to continue to make these kind of investments long into the future. Our Water Master Plan identified a critical need. In the 90s, we built the Anchorage Loop, which brought water from the Muldoon and Glen interchange near our Ship Creek plant around to the south of Anchorage and all the way around to Raspberry Road and the reservoir that's at Kincaid there. We probably should have called it a fishhook instead of a loop, because if we have any break, we could lose water supply to southwest Anchorage. In this case, if there's a break, say just east of the Seward Highway near Hartsell Road, in that pipeline, that could put most of southwest Anchorage out of water, as is indicated by the red zone there. We are currently operating Ship Creek and Wells as our primary source of water supply this week. We carefully planned the move to take Clutna offline so we could affect some efficiency improvements to the Clutna project, to the Clutna water plant, to help us provide further for resiliency and protection of the water supply by isolating backwash flows from the filters. So that process is underway. I don't think that anyone will have noticed that we changed water supply for this 2-week period, and we'll be back online next week. At the same time, by the same token, this backup facility is really important to us. And we have construction plans in place to do a number of benefits, a number of improvements to the Ship Creek facility. One of the other areas of efficiency and resilience is in pressure zone conversions. Our tariff allows for pressures to go from 20 psi to 100 psi, and we'd like to keep the target in the 40 to 80 range. However, this causes us to have a number of extra small pressure zones that are hard to manage. So by converging some pressure zones and adjusting some pressures that apply to customers, we'll have the ability to provide water from several different sources and minimize the maintenance requirements to get to different pressure reducing valves and booster stations in the meantime. So there's a number of these that are occurring in the Eagle River area, and the blue area shows convergence of several zones in the downtown or the central Anchorage Bowl. Wastewater Master Plan looks at different facilities. We have a number of things undergoing upgrades at Asplin, the largest of which is a conversion to hypochlorite disinfection technology away from gas technology. Gas has been we have a single source of supply for that chlorine gas. It's also chlorine gas, and a mishap could be disastrous. So we want to get away from that older and more hazardous technology and move to on-site generation of chlorine gas that's already dissolved in the water before we apply it to the wastewater. That would be as hypochlorite. At Eagle River, we're doing a bunch of stuff. Girdwood, we are working closely with ADEC to review our discharge limits there and make sure that we make improvements that will meet limits.
Can you go back to the Eagle River? Lots of stuff.
Oh, lots of stuff at Eagle River.
Let's focus on that for 2 minutes.
Okay.
We have 15 minutes.
Well, this is part of my 15 minutes
I
question,
understand.
so
All right.
I just will hit it now.
I think the biggest thing there is the headworks. The plant had significant upgrades back in 1987. We've done a few significant but not huge changes. But one of the things that is an ongoing problem for us is that the first step in the treatment process is to screen off all the big stuff. Twigs, well, there's a lot of other stuff that's unmentionable that won't make it through the screen. Paper products, wipes. If you're using wipes for your kitchen or your baby or your manufactured wipes, they are advertised as flushable. And indeed, they're flushable. But once they get flushed, they clog pumps, they clog screens, they make a mess of things. So we want to do a better job in the headworks to handle the screenings. And that's one of the focuses of the upgrade at the plant. That's the biggest thing there. Girdwood we talked about. Here's the outline of the improvements at Girdwood when they're all finished. We completed phase 1 of that work, including an influent pump station, a admin building, and a new generation facility last year. And again, we're working out the details with DEC on the treatment requirements before we build the process component. Responsible financial management means looking beyond the election cycle. As you know, we did not put in a request for an increase in rates for 2015. We do have still before the RCA a hearing that takes place in May for 2014 rates. So as it stands right now, the Regulatory Commission, if they did not uphold our application or all the aspects of our application, the component of the rates that we applied in 2014 could be refunded to customers. I'm confident that we'll put every effort. I know we'll put every effort in, and I'm pretty confident that we'll have the rates approved. But I think it's an important and a good public process to test that at the Regulatory Commission level every couple of years. It's just a shame that it takes so darn long to get that heard.
What was the justification for not approving the 14 request? Was there?
It was just an intervention on the part of the consumer advocacy groups. The state's Department of Law has what's it called? The Regulatory Affairs Public Advocacy Group, and they try and poke at everything that comes along. And that's a good public process. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of energy to respond to that.
Yep.
But the good news is that we're not high, we're not low, we're in the middle of the pack with respect to both water and sewer expenses compared to our cities of the same size in the northern tier. As far as rates go, though, I think it's important to note that you have probably heard, and we hear often about people that might be a single family, might have a single family service connection, might be a single person that's living there, and he wants to know why he pays as much for water as the people with 10 kids across the street. Well, the answer is pretty straightforward. The water itself costs very little. The real expense in operation of the utility is to keep that 1,600 miles of pipe in service and provide for that infrastructure. In fact, if you go on this list, 39% of the rates are dedicated to infrastructure. That's the utility's largest rate component. The cost of water is very small in comparison. And through negotiations with MLP, we might be able to reduce that further.
I like that little jab.
The nice thing is about our system is we do it include the lake versus towns like Vegas that work over aquifer. I can understand metering here, but we've got, what's the carrying capacity of the Kootenai Lake? 1 million people? 500,000, it's got to be a carrying capacity for a lake that big.
Right now, it could be huge.
But you're
But-
saying it's
but-
not the cost of the water, it's the distribution.
Yeah.
So therefore, people on the far end of the pipe might be paying more than the people on the other end.
But recall, if you will, that all of the water that Eklutna Lake could be going through the Eklutna hydroelectric project. So we take about 10% of that water for diversion to the public water supply. So I'm certain that between the electric utilities and the water utility, we can use all the water from the lake for a long time to come. What the researchers at the APU have determined is that we're actually seeing a little bit of a benefit right now with respect to the discharge from the lake, because the discharge from the glacier is higher than it would be on the long-term perspective. That doesn't mean that it's going to go away anytime soon. The glacier is going to be there for hundreds of years, but because the melting of the glacier has increased in the past couple of decades, there's more water coming into the lake and more water available to the electric utility and the water utility that may not have been available 100 years ago.
There's other towns that would love to have the water supply we have.
I'm sorry?
There's other towns that would love to have the water supply we have.
We are the envy of everyone we talk to across the country.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we talked about two pillars. We talked about responsible finances. We talked about reliable infrastructure. But professional service also means that we have to have the right people to do what we got to do. We've changed a bit of the team in the past couple of years. We got added 2 younger executive directors of the operations and maintenance division, Mark Spafford, and the treatment division, Dave Persinger. And they brought a lot of youthful energy to the utility, and as a result, we can see that in the what's really the buoyant atmosphere in the divisions that those guys are responsible for. And again, the composition of the utility staff is changing. Over half the staff has got 5 years or less experience with the utility. So as boomers like us retire and go off to do something else, we got to bring new people in. We got to make sure that they're trained up, and we got to make sure that they know that the commitment is to public health and the environment. These guys do through the labor structure. The plumbers and AMEA are important parts of our operation. We try to keep them trained up as best we can through groups like the Alaska Water and Wastewater Management Association. They run what's called the Top Ops competition every year, where 3 operators and teams will answer a variety of questions about their functions as operators and in operations and maintenance, and win a prize. And one of the prizes that the Alaska Association does is provide for their registration to take part in the national competition. So it's an important incentive for those guys to get tuned up. We have a number of other developments. We do training with call centers, and we've seen significant improvement in our response to callers coming into the call center over the past year because of that training. And we try to keep apprised on the national level by participation in national organizations as well. Last section of this presentation is about the public. We are subject to public scrutiny, and clearly we need transparency with the public. So that's our goal, is to be as transparent as possible. We've begun doing things like tweeting and Facebooking to help that along. We've made use of what the police department has pioneered in the Nixle environment to make use of Nixle to warn people about breaks and about issues that the utility has on an emergency basis. But really, it's transparency for all of our utility operations that we're not committed. We're clearly committed to the environment. We have clearly reliable infrastructure, clearly responsible finances, clearly professional service. Last note is our 4-part message to the public. It's not about the water. It's not about even the service. It's about the investment that we're making with ratepayer money to ensure reliable service, safeguard public health and the environment long into the future.
Thank Thank you. I maybe over the years have taken an above average interest in AWWU. I don't know what that says about me, but
Welcome.
I've sat through these presentations for many, many, many hours. And I always find what I really appreciate about this department is your holistic view. You know, when you know there's a road project going on, or, you know, willing to work with MLMP or any of the other entities, I think that's good government, and I appreciate that. But the one I want to talk about is the PRVs in Eagle River. So what have we have you solidified a strategy for the community as far as these people that in individual homes that have to install these? What is the outreach looking like? Because I know it was in flux. Where are we at there?
We're beginning the outreach by the end of the first quarter, and the first project is slated for, well, we know which project is going to be first. I don't remember which pressure zone it is exactly, but what we want to do is apprise people through community meetings, through mailers, through our social media work, to let them know that their pressure may change. And if the pressure is going to change from something less than what they've seen in the past to something that's beyond the typical range, if we go above 100 psi, there's potential for that to have effects on the pressure release valve in their water tank or in their hot water tank, or some other impacts on their household plumbing. To that end, we will be offering a reimbursement for a pressure reducing valve in the home. And we want to make sure that we want to make sure that 100% of the homes that might be affected like that are aware of that a good 6 months at least before we implement that pressure change.
And when do we think that pressure change is going to be effective?
We wouldn't see it till at the earliest late 2015.
Okay, so some of the community council conversations we've heard have been people were concerned about having to report on their taxes if they get some sort of, you know, rebate, if there were only certain vendors they could use. Those are the kind of questions. So my suggestion would be, AWU, number one, especially, you know, a good few months before you actually do it, you make sure you get a nice story or article in the Star, because that's the Eagle River paper.
Yep.
I would be happy to host an event at Jitters, just so AWU has an opportunity to talk to people. So you might want to coordinate, you know, if you're going to get something in the Star, have a date there, because Jitters is essentially the Eagle River hangout, right? So it gives people an opportunity to just come in and ask questions, because a lot of people that I've talked to don't understand what this means to their home.
Right.
And, you know, if somebody has to spend $600, they get a little nervous. So I think, I know this isn't its infancy yet, but I think we need to be very, because this is essentially the first zone that we're doing this in. It's my understanding. I mean, this is like the test case. So this will come to, I think, your area, district, actually. So we just want to make sure that we have, I mean, rock solid communication and a rock solid strategy for people to engage in the right plumbers, the right reimbursement way. You know, we just know what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
We need
Really important.
We need to close up here. Got one
That's
minute.
fine.
So some of that stuff, hopefully you can communicate offline.
Oh, I was going to say, that's it. That was it.
Okay, I would like to give the next minute of public participation. If anybody has anything that they want to say, let's get it on the record. And seeing none. Thank you all for coming, and thank you for the information.